Chicago. It's another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. This is number 84 during the time of the pandemic. It's for the week of January 15th in the year 2022. I'm Michael James. I'm here with my longtime running partner, Katy Hogan. We welcome all you sisters and brothers, friends, family, and neighbors. Today, we'll be talking with Marguerite Horberg, Catherine Murphy, Kimberly Waller. They'll be telling us about the celebration of life of Paulo Freire. Rough on the pronunciation there. We'll be joined too by our longtime sports reporting pal, Gordon Thompson, and a new friend, Han Nguyen, candidate for the Illinois State Rep seat in the 13th District. Okay, let's let it roll.
The good thing happening this week is Michael James is turning 80 years old. Woo! And always has linked his birthday with that of Martin Luther King Jr., one of our first heroes, both of us, as well as other birthday buddy, Muhammad Ali. Long may you wave, my dear friends. Long may you wave.
Thank you, Katy. I appreciate that. I'm working on it.
All right. So let's move on to what's going on nationally. Briefly, is we are mired in the fight for voters' rights. There is the legislation before the Senate that has been passed by the Congress, by the Congress, going to the Senate now, and it's completely abandoned by the entirety of the elected Republican Party. Please remember this in November, people. These are not folks who are concerned with your right to vote. Quite the opposite. They are attempting to limit it. Nothing could be less democratic. Nothing could be more important in 2022 than we get rid of these people who think it's okay to not support voters' rights. We got to send a message. God, we've got to send a message. I'm sorry, Michael, I just have to vent. You got anything on that?
I like it when you vent. I think that's why one of the key things about the show is when you vent a little bit.
Is it? God help us.
Vent on, sister.
All right. Well, I keep hoping that myself and any of us who are inclined get inspired to write the message that will change minds, whether it's to Republican senators, which I would love to write a few, what I think of as one-time reasonable people, and how to get the words that will really go to their heart and say, this is not the right way to do things. This is America. We all get to vote. You don't get to mess with that. I'm hoping for that language to appear so I can send a message.
I have a couple of lines that I'm going to share sometime, but I've got to run them through the censor first, so we'll save them for another time about the Republicans. Let's move on to a little bit of labor. Next week, we're going to, I think, go deeper into labor struggles, but everyone should know that workers continue to rise up. And that's a good thing. Here in Chicago, there's been labor movement at Amazon, at the Art Institute, and at Starbucks. There's a union drive going on at Starbucks, both at locations downtown and in Logan Square. All of this follows the Starbucks union starting up there in Buffalo, New York, and it is spreading around the country. So more on this to come. Remember, workers are rising up, and we like that.
Okay. COVID-wise, we're still under the grip of Omicron, but a lot of people in the last few days have begun to observe and remark on the leveling out that's happening. One of the ways to measure how things are going on, unfortunately, is in the captive population. And Sheriff Tom Dart this week reported that COVID cases are dropping in Cook County Jail for the first time since this latest surge. It's interesting to have that as a research spot. Anyway, good luck, everybody. Stay safe, wear your masks.
Yeah, wear the mask, get the shots, keep your distance, get tested. Okay, here on the local front in the 49th Ward, I'd just like to give a shout out to our alderwoman, Maria Haddon. I've watched her on Facebook early in the morning. She keeps us informed about what was going on during the standoff between the teachers union and the Chicago Board of Education. And she also encouraged people to keep their sidewalks clear and warned people about the slipperiness that was going on out there. And I think it's good. I like seeing her as, you know, I've just been up for a little while and there she is out there doing the work. Good alderwoman. Thank you.
Do you find this in posts she posts in Facebook or Instagram?
Yeah, it was Facebook Live, I think. She goes on Facebook Live, you know, and I'm waking up.
She is hands-on as a local leader. And we like that in an alder person. That's what they're supposed to be, actually. And we've had a few hands-on alder people in our lives.
Yeah, we've had two in a row that are good.
We expect it. Okay, so you are listening to Live from the Heartland, Heartland at Home edition number 84 on WLUW 88.7 FM. Stay tuned. We will be right back with our first guests. Well, thank you and welcome to our guests. What we just listened to was Julius Lester singing See How the Rain Falls. He was a famous guy. Maybe Marguerite can tell us why she suggested him, but I'm so happy to have the faces behind the event that we've been telling you about occasionally since it started, which is the celebration of Paulo Freire's centennial. So we're happy to have you here to share with our audience who Paulo Freire was, for some who don't know him, but also why we should be celebrating this at this exact moment historically. Thank you so much. And let's start. Hey, Marguerite, long time.
Hi, Catherine. Hi, Katy and Michael. I'm going to kick it right over to Catherine so she can jump in and talk about her two films we're going to see on January 23rd.
So we've been doing this series of for honoring the Paulo Freire centenary starting last September, which was the 100-year anniversary since his birth. Paulo Freire was born in September of 1921. And so with Hot House and the Literacy Project and with a really beautiful team, including scholar Kimberly Waller and scholar educator and our other colleague Rita Sakai and others, we have put together a series of programs focusing on liberation education and this long arc of struggle toward education justice that many, many generations have carried on, and we certainly need to be pushing it forward and sort of in the spirit of pushing it forward. So our next upcoming event is on January 23rd, Marguerite just mentioned, and it's about literacy and voting, or the connection between education and voting. And two of the short films that will be included were produced by the Literacy Project. One is called They Say I'm Your Teacher, and it is a 9-minute short that was on the South Carolina citizenship schools that were started by Septima Clark, Esau Jenkins, and Bernice Robinson, who's not such a known name, not a known enough name for us, but she was the first cousin of Septima Clark, and she was the first teacher in the citizenship schools. She was recruited by Septima Clark to be the first teacher. And this short film is made with the original 16 millimeter archives of Lucy Massey Phoenix, who interviewed Septima Clark and Bernice Robinson in 1982 and made a beautiful film called You Got to Move, out of which this is taken. And then the other film will be shown for the first time. It's a 6-7 minute work in progress on the SNCC and core freedom schools of Mississippi in the early 60s that are sort of, very intimately stitched in the quilt to the citizenship schools. So really delighted about this event and hope folks will join us. And again, talking about the link to voting and voting rights and how we need to be thinking about that right now, working on that right now.
Right. Did you want to direct something else, Marguerite, to yourself, or because I want to
I was going to be the cleanup speaker, so
that's
I'm
fine.
going to kick it over to Kimberly.
Kimberly,
so she could talk about her work. And
thank you. Before I pick up the baton, could we mention the fact that January 22nd, there's going to be a bonus movie that's free, and say a minute about that?
Yes. Is that the Let the People Decide?
Yes.
Is that what yeah, I was just going to ask about that. You took the words right out of my mouth. Okay. Who do I ask? Do I ask you, Kimberly, or Catherine?
Kimberly.
Keep it with Kimberly.
Okay. Tell us, Kimberly, what's going on?
Actually, that is a movie that talks about something that's really relevant today. And for the elections that will be coming up, our local elections, our statewide elections in November, understanding the fact that there is a current, right? During that time, the idea of people who are from my community in particular having the opportunity to have voting rights and the risk of being able to fight for those rights. And the movie, I mentioned this before, was difficult for me to see. There were really hard parts to see. And I tried to watch it with my mom, who is originally from Memphis, Tennessee.
Wow.
And it was painful for her as well, because she lived through those moments and that struggle. And today it's a little different because there's not the overt necessarily violence, but there's a soft violence that's happening when people who are disenfranchised are not allowed to exercise that right of being a citizen. And that movie is really an opportunity for us to reflect about what's happening today and how we can mobilize and galvanize a community so that those outcomes can be more favorable to us the day after the election.
So what we should tell people if they're just tuning in, we're talking about an event that's online. It's the Hot House and the Literacy Project in coordination, right? Coordinated to put together this year-long celebration of Paulo Freire's work and life. And Kimberly, what you just said about tying it to the current struggle is, thank you for saying that, because we had just, before we introduced you guys, covered what's going on in DC and how it's incredible that half of the sitting representatives, i.e. all of the Republicans, are sitting out supporting voters' rights. And we should never, ever let anyone forget that they are doing that right now. And it may not be blood violence, but it is violence. You are so right.
What's
Tonight,
violence?
huh? Go ahead.
I was going to say, it is, considering 7 people died on January 6th, I would say blood violence is part of the mix.
Absolutely. Marguerite, why don't you tell us a little bit about Paulo Freire and how it is that he is someone that is so inspirational that he deserves a year of centenary marking. How's that?
Or more.
That's a good question for the cleanup hitter.
Hot House's hallmark is really I think the hallmark of Hot House is really to marry high quality programming with activism and social justice activism. And the whole point of the series and each program within the series is to punch up a way that people who are watching can actually get involved and not just kind of be entertained or sort of have a passive relationship with culture, but to actually find a way into what they're seeing to then do something concrete and tangible. And that's something that we feel really distinguishes Hot House's work and the Literacy Project from other kinds of nonprofit or other kinds of cultural work. So Paulo Freire, I think, was a touchstone on so many levels. One, he really speaks to this idea of self-determination and self-articulation of actualizing your own personhood through literacy. And I've been very fortunate to meet Catherine Murphy, who's got a whole catalog of amazing films, and Kimberly Waller, and also Peter Kuttner's part of the project, and Rita. And together, the 5 of us have had a series of about 10 programs that have really tried to look at different aspects of where literacy and education has had a profound community base of organizing and how people have been victorious. And I think what we're very keen to push forward is this idea of optimism and the actualization that people can have through organizing. So some of the films we've shown, last month we showed a film about Indigenous people in the outback of Australia called Yo Se Puede, which used the Cuban model of teaching people how to read to empower folks. It looks, Michael, like you want to ask a question.
No, I was just giving a signal that I was going to follow up.
Oh, okay. So then I'll just say a few other words that I think it's our intention, and we received a small grant from the Illinois Humanities Council, which we're grateful for, to follow up our series with additional work to create a curriculum and an online resource on the Literacy Project website. And we've had so many amazing conversations that are intergenerational through the whole course of the series. And we found that it's a very important, I think, oral history document to have the voices of people like Jose Lopez and Bill Ayers and Sande Grande and Judy Hoffman and the people who are part of the Maestra alphabetization project in Cuba, Kimberly and Rita, who's a profound Freire scholar, and just have all of these people's voices and their conversations documented, we think is really important.
Go ahead, Michael.
The collaboration with the Literacy Project. In your video, Kimberly, you described the Cuban model for all but eliminating illiteracy in Cuba. Tell us about the work of the project here and in Chicago, and why you think we should model it after Cuba.
For a number of reasons, but number one, Cuba has, in 1961, they were able to, just as a little bit of a background, were able to effectively teach nearly 1 million people how to read, because at that time they had, as we do in this country, an issue with literacy, meaning alphanumeracy, reading and writing. But they weren't just dealing with reading and writing, they were dealing with environmental literacy, health literacy, because they had to combat parasites. It doesn't matter if I can read and write. When I leave the school building, I know that I'm not cared for. I know that I'm not valued. I know that I don't have agency or self-efficacy. Those are just as important for you to recognize your humanity as it is being able to write your name or being able to count. Because we're more than just that part of ourselves. We're whole beings. And I think that was the key, one of the keys behind the success of the literacy campaign.
We're going to be running out of time, so I want all of you to share one more time how people tune into this, hook up to it, and what are the specific things that they should know and be looking for.
I think the best way people can find out more and find where to watch is hothouse.net. It's our website, and all the links are there. And I wanted Kimberly just to have time to say one thing about the program that she's curating in February and March. So if we have a second or two, she can mention that.
Go ahead.
Put it on your calendars. February 20th, we'll be screening a movie that's just actually a teaser. It's going to be talking about education clearly, but on March 20th, we're going to have some dynamic speakers that are going to be talking about the foundation of the fifth point of the Black Panther Party's program about self-determination and about culturally relevant pedagogy and instructional approaches to learning about your community and the resiliency that's part of our survival in this country.
I'm really sorry that we're running out of time, because I wanted Catherine to ask you more about the Literacy Project. So maybe we're going to have you back, if that's okay.
We'd be happy to come back. We'll be doing programming for a couple more months. So absolutely.
Are you joining us from the West Coast?
Catherine, why don't you say your website?
Our website is theliteracyproject.org. And also the events on January 23rd will be live streamed through Facebook. I also wanted to say, I think Twitch, right? The Hot House Twitch channel, Hot House Facebook page, and then we'll be, multiplying that through the Literacy Project, social media sites and others. I think Highlander is also, two of our speakers in January are the co-directors of Highlander Center, and they will also be live streaming through their sites, but all based at Hot House. But the Literacy Project is, we do short and medium length films lifting up the long arc of struggle for education justice, literacy justice, through an intersectional lens, looking how it connects with racial justice struggles and economic justice and issues like voting.
Catherine, real quickly, how do you choose the films?
Michael, that's
We
not-
have a very, very
not a
long
quick
list of
one.
films to do.
That's
We're looking at, let's just say, connecting past, present, and future. People that have worked on education justice struggles in the past, reaching back into that past, but also seeing that as, fuel for now and looking forward and keeping people energized to continue fighting for education, quality education for all.
I want to thank you all. It's been great to meet Kimberly and Catherine. I'm really touched that we got to have you today for this time. We'll have to have you back when we have a fuller segment, more time. So thank you, Marguerite, for introducing us. And we'll say, looking forward to January 23rd, the next installment of the Paulo Freire Centennial. And someday I'll talk to you about meeting him in Ivan Illich's school down in Mexico. But that's another story. Long time
Thanks for
ago.
bringing up the memory of Julius Lester and also for
Yeah.
someone mentioning Highlander Folk School.
Amen.
See
Amen.
you later.
All right. Thanks you
Thank you.
all.
It was an honor.
It's always a great pleasure to introduce our pal, the noted educator and track coach, Gordon
An
Thompson.
alternative host.
Yeah, you could be an alternative. You could be on anytime you want almost. Anyhow, good to see you, Gordon. And I got to tell everybody that I've been totally possessed by the Chicago Bulls, who took a big hit from the Nets the other night. But I'd like for you to maybe fill us in on the rest of the sports world. What's going on? What's important? What's caught your attention?
The Chicago Bulls are a great team to follow. They got one of the best coaches in the world who came not just from the Thunder, but prior to that, he was the Florida Gator coach and won 2 national championships for
Your alma mater.
Yeah. And so Billy Donovan is the real deal. Every player loves Billy Donovan, and most management do like him too. I'm surprised he's tolerating the Bulls management though. So the world of sports, what's cooking is, the Winter Olympics is right around the corner, starting on February 4th and going to February 20th. And I got to say, I really, even though I'm a Summer Olympic guy, track and field, I love the Winter Olympics. And the one event that really floats my boat is the #1 endurance sport, and that is cross-country skiing combined with shooting, the biathlon. I think the biathlon is one of the more compelling sports. Why? Well, cross-country skiers are the best endurance athletes in the world. They're better than marathoners. And the reason that they're so good in endurance athletes is that they're not just moving their legs, all the major muscle in their legs, but their arms as well. So and the arms are connected to these 2 poles. So their arms are not just doing balance work, they're really working.
Yeah.
So there's a test in athletics called the max VO2, the maximum amount of volume of oxygen that a body can process.
Mm-hmm.
Cross-country skiers have got the highest, off the charts. Marathoners, the next highest. I love cross-country skiers in that they're the great endurance athletes, but the biathlon, how do they slow their heart rate down coming into the shooting zone is a big, big trick. And I love their technique in doing it. First, they slowed their pace down coming into the shooting zone, and then they regulate their breathing. The shots that are fired are timed in between heartbeats. Holy schmoly, how do you do that? So your heart is racing, going like 150 beats per minute. How could you possibly time the squeezing of the trigger in between heartbeats when their body is most still? Really artistic, really phenomenally, just great athletes. And to be able to shoot, first they shoot in two different positions, standing and then laying. Standing is really, really hard. You have nothing to brace yourself against. So they brace themselves against their own body. But that target is 50 meters away, and they're trying to hit something as big as maybe an orange.
Do you mind my asking you a question, Gordo? How long is the biathlon track? How long?
Well, there's loops. There's they
Right.
will lay out a loop of 2 kilometers or 1.5 kilometers, because
And how many times in that loop do they stop to shoot?
once per loop.
Okay.
So the loop, and then they'll come into the shooting station, which is right where all the crowd is. That's where the stands are. So everybody can cheer after every shot. Is like, and then you can tell who's hot. It's like the whole stands are going, yay!
Yeah. Yeah.
And five shots they got to get off in a row,
Right.
time between for each station. And they miss one shot out of that 5, they got to do a little penalty time.
Right.
And sometimes it's in the form of a little penalty loop, an extra skiing, 100 meters extra they got to ski. Oh my God. So the pressure is really on. And what a wonderful event that the greatest endurance athletes in the world can just get into the mind, body, and spirit of really athleticism.
I'm with you, Gordon. I love that event too. It's crazy cool, crazy cool. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to pay a lot more attention to it this year. Rather than wait around and watch people falling and crashing, those things always scare me.
Let me
they
ask,
do.
There's a lot of,
let me ask
Go
a
ahead.
question, Michael. Gordo, what's your feeling about Biden announcing a couple months back that while our athletes can play, there would be not an official presence or whatever that breaks down to at the Winter Olympics due to China's, misbehavior or whatever. What do you think about that?
Politics and sport lives on. So that's all it is just mediary politics. It has the diplomats have nothing to do with the games. They're just there in the stands as part of just witnessing. It's just fluff for them. They have nothing to do with the Olympic Games. It's not going to impact the games. They've just less seats taken up by the big wigs in the stands. That's it. So it's
hey, Gordo, what do you got
Biden
on the
shaking
tennis
his-
world? You
In
got
the tennis
anything on the
world?
tennis world?
Well,
Just
just
jump
back
in,
to
Michael.
the Olympics real quick on the Olympics. Hats off to the IOC, International Olympic Committee, to add events that are mixed, both men and women competing in the same events. So these mixed relays and mixed events are just fantastic of getting the two genders together in a format. What's new in the tennis world? Well, there's a chump by the name of Djokovic, and that's exactly what he is. He's a joke. He's trying to get into the Australian Open without a vaccine. Hey, just because you're the world's best at one particular sport does not give you the right to circumvent the laws of governments that you're visiting. Hey, that's the rule of the land in Australia. Play the game. If you want to play the game in the Australian Open, get vaccinated. It's that simple. So I have very little compassion for Djokovic. I think he needs to grow up a little bit and be a part of it. The last little deal was Australia denied his visa once again. So he's got to get vaccinated or he's gone.
Gordon, during your time at Loyola, you coached some of the finest runners in the country. You had All-Americans and a number of people who've gone into the Loyola Hall of Fame, Sports Hall of Fame. We hear tell that you'll be coming back to Chicago soon when yet another member of those illustrious squads, Andre Fambe, will be inducted into the Loyola Sports Hall of Fame. How about telling us a little bit about Andre and the other standouts that you coached back in those glory years?
Hey, I was really lucky at Loyola to have the greatest recruiting ground in the world, the city of Chicago and the suburbs. That 312 area code back before 708 was started. Hey, that was the most fertile ground of middle distance and distance running. Great high school coaching, great programs, and kids that are just fired up. Hey, I went back in 1986 when I was recruiting Andre Fomby. I went to a cross country meet to recruit some other young cat by the name of Jim Gibson, the best distance runner in the state. And there at that same meet was Andre. And I'm like, who's this guy glued to Jim Gibson? Like there's no space. Who's this guy that just won't be shaken? Who's this guy that won't give up? That looks smooth as silk. And that just was like, holy schmoly. So I quickly forgot about Jim Gibson. I really didn't get him. I had a chance to get the next guy who was Andre. And what a beautiful, not just runner, but a personality, a gentleman, and a great student. He made it so easy to recruit. He was one of the most fun persons to recruit. His family was fantastic too. Andre was a minority student, and amongst distance runners, he really stuck out. For a black man to stick out amongst all hundreds and hundreds of white kids, it was like, oh, wow, here's somebody special. But when I met his family, his dad, Cleophas, and his mom, what a great, warm atmosphere. They welcomed me into their home. And I immediately fell in love with the whole entire family, not just Andre. I knew I had to get him. Hey, the other cats that, excuse me for the bell. The other cats that were on that relay team, the 4x800 relay team with Andre, were wonderful. Eddie Slowakowski's already in the Hall of Fame. Mark Burns is already in the Hall of Fame. Andre is getting inducted February 19th at the Drake basketball game versus the Ramblers. And then there's the one guy left, and that's Bill Cull. And I hope Bill Cull gets in the Hall of Fame too.
It's quite a testimony to your career, Gordo. I'm really happy for you. That's a great story to hear from you. And maybe when you're in town, not that being out of town keeps you from being on the show, but maybe you'll come back to the show in February and chit chat about it with Michael.
Maybe we'll be live from the studio.
Maybe.
I sure hope so. Those were great days. Really nice days coming from the studio itself. I really enjoy that Loyola studio.
Yeah.
And, it's really a modern place. Thank you so much.
The bell rang. You better go teach.
I'm ready. I'm teaching AutoCAD and I'm teaching architecture. I'm going to get it. All right. Thank you very much.
On, dear.
See you,
All
Chicago.
Right. Okay.
Hello, Han Nguyen. It's good to have you. You're a candidate running for Illinois State Representative from the 13th District, soon to be vacated by the current longtime progressive and former majority leader, Greg Harris. So let's begin by you telling us and our listeners and our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael and Katy. It's, again, absolute pleasure to be here today and an honor to be here today. And so I want to thank you all and certainly thank you to all the folks tuning in today. I wanted to sort of share a little bit about myself. I'm a community leader, a small business advocate, and I'm an uptown resident. I've worked in community investments my entire life, really making sure that we invest in our families and our kids in Chicago to build a much more equitable city for everyone. And so we've invested in anything from education to gun violence prevention initiatives, to workforce development programs, to infrastructure projects, to really, again, make Chicago a much more fair city for everyone, where folks have opportunity and access. And so that's what I've spent my entire life doing. And I'm very excited to run to replace, leader Greg Harris who's been a strong progressive and an amazing titan in the Illinois State House.
I saw,
Tell us where you grew. Go ahead, Kate.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for speaking over you, Michael.
Well, I was just going to ask Han to tell us a little bit about where he grew up and how he ended up in Chicago.
Yeah, so I actually am a refugee. I was actually born in Vietnam. My father fought in the Vietnam War with the United States Allied Forces. His entire family died during that war, and he spent 5 years in a prison camp. So my life is already a bonus. And so we were very lucky to have received political asylum to come to the United States in the early 1990s. Thanks to President Jimmy Carter Refugee Act of the 1980 Act. But that allowed for us to come over here, and we came over with nothing. We took a very long flight, from Vietnam to Boston Logan Airport. And then we took a long bus ride. We lived in Boston for a little bit. We were resettled by charities and organizations on the Northeast. And then we kind of made our way over to the West Coast. My mother, she kind of complained that the weather in the Northeast was nothing like the weather of Vietnam. So we got a chance to really take a bus ride to really explore the United States. And I think at one point we definitely stopped by the Midwest, Chicago as well, on that Greyhound bus before we landed in Los Angeles, California.
and then how did you wind up back in Chicago?
Yeah, so I came here, 5 years ago to work for Chicago Beyond. It's a community investment organization. We've done, again, investments in, the city. We've done investments in, really making sure that we fight for our kids and our families. So we've done anything from educational investments to housing investments to infrastructure investments to investing in nonprofits and social enterprises, but anything in which we believe can make the city of Chicago a much more equitable city for our young people and to really make sure that folks have opportunity. So I came here for the job itself, and it was started by Liz Dozier. She was the former principal of Fanger High School, and she started the organization.
She seems like a real force.
Yeah, and Liz, has been an incredible mentor to me, and it's certainly, I'm constantly inspired by it's just the work that she's done, and certainly who she is as a person, and just her tenacity to really fight for our young people, and certainly she got her start in Roseland, fighting for our young kids at Fanger High School, and so certainly I was able to help her, I was able to help join the fight with her at Chicago Beyond to make sure that we invest in our young people and invest in the potential of our fellow Chicagoans.
Han, so tell us a little bit about what you know about Illinois state politics and why you chose to enter the fray, and why did you choose to run as a state rep?
Yeah, I when I was back in college, I had a few professors who were from Chicago. They were from the Chicago School of Sociology. They were trained in sort of understanding policies in Chicago, and I got a chance to really understand Chicago's policies, the ways in which Chicago was built as a city, the redlining that happened, in Chicago, and so a lot of those systemic and sort of history of decades of systemic disinvestments in our city, and certainly, in pockets of our states as well. And certainly, I gravitated towards that, and certainly when I looked at, Illinois state politics, it's right now it's very exciting. We have a supermajority in the House and the Senate. We have new leaders stepping up, and we've done a lot in the past couple of years under Governor Pritzker to really push the state forward. Coming out of what was happening in the previous administration. So we were able to, raise the minimum wage, right? Lead on that and raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Which will be enacted pretty soon in the next couple of years. And then we also got a chance to push for, Rebuild Illinois, a huge infrastructure project that's going to put $45 billion into transforming our roads and our bridges and our infrastructure, and making sure that we have we bill more equitably for all folks in Illinois. And we certainly have also been pushing to increase funding, $350 million in education as well, right? So there's a lot of excitement right now happening in Springfield. And certainly, we've done a lot of work, but there's a lot more work to be done. And certainly we know that this pandemic has exacerbated a lot of the inequalities in Illinois. A lot of folks have been left behind. A lot of folks were already left behind during the pandemic. So we need to do better. We need to build forward. And I think this is an exciting time to really join that fight and really represent, our neighbors, our communities, and folks who have historically been left out of that process.
I'm really glad to get this chance to meet you because I saw on your website, your campaign website, that you've got a good friend of mine on your side, and that's Paul Igasaki. Paul and I worked together to elect Harold Washington, and his brother David was instrumental in getting some anti-Asian American protest, some violence to, facing it. Also, my good friend Tina Chen was also on your website. You have a special advantage coming into this work now, being not a white person. Basically, you're talking, everything you just said spoke to our history as an institutionally racist city. And as a state rep, you will be able to work on that further. And it sounds like Chicago Beyond is such a great outfit that allowed for you to be doing that work already. Share with us some things that in the district that you're running, the 13th, which is just below our district, the 14th with Kelly Cassidy. What are some of the front burner issues for you were you to be elected in November?
Yeah, definitely, Katie. And I think, we have been listening to our neighbors, our community members, local community organizations over the past several months, and we've been really listening and understanding, again, some of the challenges that our neighbors are facing, that our community members are facing, that our community organizations are facing. And certainly, I think when you look at the 13th district, there is a lot of diversity in the 13th district. It is, 45% ethnic minority. There are over 9 different languages spoken in the 13th district. And I think even if you walk, by certain blocks, right? You walk a few blocks, you can see a wide array of different life experiences, different median household incomes, and even, a drop in life expectancies, right? In a matter of blocks in the 13th district. So certainly, we want to make sure that we continue Leader Harris' legacy of fighting for those who've been underserved, of fighting for the LGBTQ community, of fighting for immigrant and minority populations, of fighting for women and fighting for people of color. We definitely want to continue Leader Harris' legacy there and build on that as well, right? And so what we've seen and what we've heard and listened to from our neighbors is, there are a lot of challenges that we have right now. Certainly, one of the biggest ones being small businesses, right? We have a lot of small business corridors in the 13th district, anywhere from Uptown to Ravenswood to Andersonville to Lincoln Square, right? I mean, you have Clark Street, you have Argyle Street, you have Broadway, and so you have a lot of small businesses right now that are struggling, during this pandemic, and they need help, right? So we need to make sure that we invest again in our small businesses. We also got to make sure that we make it much more equitable, right? To that our small business owners can access capital and funding, right? We know that there's a huge disparity when it comes to women and women of color and minority entrepreneurs who are starting up small businesses, right? And really gain that capital to really start a small business. But we also know, that we need to really support our small businesses during this time. We need to make sure that they open and operate safely, but at the same time, make sure that they have the support and resources that they need to survive and thrive during this pandemic. The other thing that we've been really listening and hearing from our neighbors is really housing. Housing is a big deal right now in our district. Housing affordability, and certainly, this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart. We have a homelessness problem in the 13th district, a lot of folks who don't have access to affordable housing. And certainly, I serve on the associates board of Sarah Circle, a women's nonprofit that addresses housing for women. And certainly, my mother actually also experienced homelessness at one point during her life as well. So, this is an issue that I really care about. And so, we need to make sure that housing is affordable for folks in the 13th district. We need to make sure that housing is a human right. We need to really take on a housing first approach, of really making sure that we put folks who are experiencing homelessness into housing first and foremost, right? And I think so when you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the first thing that you need at the very bottom is safety, housing, and shelter, and food, right? And so, and before anyone can really reach their fullest human potential. So we need to make sure that that gets done. And I believe we can do that, right? I believe that when we look at large developments coming in, we need to make sure that we allocate for affordable housing. We need to also look at mixed income housing. We need to also look at innovative housing models like tiny homes, looking at how other states have moved from shipping containers to making shipping containers affordable housing.
Han Nguyen, we're going to run out of time here. But we are so happy to have you. I have a feeling we will be speaking to you again. And good luck in your petition gathering, your signature gathering, and good luck with your health. I'm sure you will come out of isolation just fine. We've all been going through this. So where do people go to get involved with your campaign?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Katy and Michael, again, for having me here today. It's been a great pleasure. To get involved in our grassroots campaign, this is an inclusive campaign. We're fighting for a much more equitable future for everyone to have meaningful opportunity. Please visit votehan.com. That's VOTEHOAN.com. This whole entire weekend, we'll be gathering signatures. I myself will be quarantining, but we got amazing volunteers. So please go to votehan.com/events to check out events this weekend. It'll be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Martin Luther King Day as well on Monday. So we got a full array of different time slots for folks, all throughout the day. And we definitely want to see folks out there join us on the campaign trail. And I myself, will make sure that I gain my health back and certainly get back there with folks as well. But this is an inclusive campaign. We got 6 months to do this. And we got to make sure that we get our message across to as many voters as possible and make sure that we run a very inclusive campaign. And as folks have noticed, we've done a very language inclusive campaign as well on our website.
Okay, Han Nguyen, it's a pleasure to meet you, and we'll talk to you again.
And I'm looking, next time you're on, I'm going to ask you what you do for fun. Okay.
Next time.
All right, thank you so much, Michael. Thanks so much, Kate. Have a great day.
Both.
Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you so much. Wow, that was cool to meet that young man.
Yeah, he's an impressive young guy.
Interestingly enough, while we were recording that phone call that came in was from Senator Simmons from our district, who is working on restoring voting rights for people incarcerated. He's working, I think, with State Rep LaShawn Ford on that. And they're hosting a town hall, which is January 31st. So we might actually have him on the show next week, which will be before that, to talk about that and to restore the right to vote for people serving in Illinois state prisons. So let's see. In memoriam, we have Michael.
Well, Clyde Bellecourt passed away at the age of 85. He was one of the founders of the American Indian movement, which began up in the Franklin Street area, I think in Minneapolis, where they, like the Black Panthers and other organizations, had community police patrols that would follow the police and question them when they mishandled situations and arrests. The American Indian movement was responsible for the sit-in at Wounded Knee. They've done a lot of stuff. There are various outshoots of AIM still acting up. We're going to miss him. We've met his brother, who was at the Heartland along with John Trudell. Remember that Leonard Peltier is still alive and is still incarcerated. And we also want to remember Ronnie Spector of the Ronettes, and we're going to go out with her playing Be
Well, we
My
might.
Baby.
We'll make no promises. Depending on how much time we have, we may hear
Okay,
Be My Baby, but for all of you who don't know about her, play some Ronnie Spector music for yourself on YouTube. You'll enjoy it. For over 25 years, we have brought you live from the Heartland, now called Heartland at Home, broadcast every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Central on Chicago's WLUW 88.7 FM, streaming live from WLUW.org. And we are archived on our channel at youtube.com/Heartland Media. And now on Spotify and Google Podcasts, type in Live from the Heartland. Thank you for listening. We thank our team, Luis, Lynn, and podcast director Gwen Brown. Do good in the world.
hey, the world needs all the good that we do.